Evening, folks. Welcome to another session from the Old Wise Asylum. Let the dead tend the dead is the story tonight. Basically, we're just going to try and expand and build that concept in your minds as to what it is we're all trying to achieve when it comes to dealing with this state and this commercial garbage. And I have to say, what has been put together tonight is quite interesting, and it should help you. It should help you immensely, actually, in understanding this. Getting the picture in your mind so that you can see what you're doing, so that you can actually utilise all the data you've already accumulated and start to feel confident enough to actually start to put it together, you know, if you're reacting to stuff or you're just moving straight into getting it dealt with, basically. But there's some very interesting points in here tonight, so it's going to be well worth a listen if that's what it is you're moving to do, which I know most of you are, and that's good, because the more of us that can achieve it, the more potent we become if we work together to put this corporate UK state back in its place, because there is no crown here anymore in England, as we discussed. They're all corporate. We've looked at the Act that makes it very clear that once these institutions become corporate, they can no longer claim to act for a monarch, and no longer can they use the crown crest. So what the courts are up to, I don't know. Even though it's not really a court seal, it's just the logo, it still has a crown on it. So they're breaching their own rules all over the show by every means and method just to keep you guys from seeing the reality of it. And I see that old Fat Fingers and his Shagger son are getting a bit of flack today. I'm not sure what that's all about, but of course it would suit the Bolsheviks, would it not, to start taxing the death out of the wealthy so they all bugger off and leave, which, I mean, a lot have already done, haven't they, and off to Dubai and all those little fancy places, but never mind, that's just the way the Bolsheviks works. Drain the brains and drain the wealth, and that's exactly what they're doing. So very interesting tonight. You should enjoy it if law is your thing. But like I said, there's some very poignant points in there that help just form that concept in your mind, because that is actually what it's about. Because how long have many of us been dealing with this stuff, studying it, learning it, and you tend to forget what you did years ago, because there's that many acts and statutes and nonsense to get in your mind. It is quite difficult to actually form it as a concept enough that you can actually start to use it on your own back and feel pretty solid in it. You know, it's a difficult thing. And so it is important that concept is embedded in your mind so that you can then use it. So hopefully tonight should help immensely in that quest. So yeah, you might enjoy this one. What have we got here? Just a few little things to go through, because of course, there you go. You can see why they've given this guy some roles in the last 10 years. Michael Caine supports bringing back national service. Grow up, he says. Of course, he's talking about your offspring. I mean, have these people learnt nothing? You know, have they learnt nothing? You know, and then Power Surge, UK spends 250 million each month importing record volumes of electricity from Europe. Now, if ever they wanted to get us tied back into Europe, this would be the perfect way. And of course, they've announced they want to steal the electricity grid and the gas and create a corporate entity. The globalist World Bank has misplaced a staggering 41 billion, surprise, surprise, in climate change funds. An investigation has revealed. And Oxfam launched an investigation, but of course Oxfam's part of it as well. So they're just pretty much letting you know it's gone, and nobody's going to make a fuss about it, and away they go. But this fella, this is how they keep these puppets going. He's had, the last 10, 15 years, he's had a few roles, dragged him out of the pits of hell, because, in my opinion, he's a shit actor anyway. And, of course, they want to excite the baby boomers, but get them back into that old mindset of, Real Britannia. Because, of course, the baby boomers still haven't recognised the fact that, not only that, they sat in the chairs giving it the big about the immigrants, but yet they're going to start to pay for your white offspring to be sent off to conscription, not realising that they're going to be sat there in the living room and the only people left outside are going to be not their own race. And that face there, what an absolute arsewipe. But they do as they're told, don't they? They're not their own people. And they're just trying to excite the baby boomer again to call for your offspring to be conscripted. Because, of course, they know they're not going to think beyond their own stupidity. And it tends to work. It does tend to work. Now, this is interesting as well, because I didn't know about this egg gig. But it says, Suge Knight revealed Hollywood bizarre boiled egg test, where industry hopefuls endure a ritual involving an egg to prove their loyalty. Former Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight previously shed light on a bizarre and unsettling initiation ritual within the music industry. They would have those guys pull the pants down, bend over and stick it up their arse. The egg breaks, they say they're not ready yet, and that they haven't put enough work in. And there's the born-again alpha Christian with the egg, clearly symbolising that, because they don't think you know about it. Well, now you do. So for all those that think that this fella's some kind of hero, it's on you, really, at the end of the day. So I just thought that just worth a look, because not everybody sees that in Russell Brand. They think he's some kind of genius or some kind of hero, and on their side. And what I forgot to put up last week, even though we were speaking about it, is the fact that, we've got this big idea all over the show that actually that Putin's against this immigration system and all that, when yet, you've got to understand that the great work of the ages is all the king's horses and all the king's men operating for the popes are ensuring that the covenant between Abraham and the fruit bat God comes to pass. And that's what the end times is. It's not the end of the earth. It's the end of this covenant that they've been playing out for aeons. And, it's like Starmer at the moment. You've got 74% of all these Muslim people that don't work. So the state's paying for that. It's paying for all these immigrants that's coming in. And we're paying for it. They're stealing our infrastructure from under us, which is why they've got the Bolsheviks in. The Bolsheviks, of course, are moving back to shove us into Europe, and as we just looked at, that electricity is the perfect gig to make us fully dependent on Europe. Once we start getting all our energy or electricity from Europe, then if we don't play ball, they switch it off. They've shut down all our power stations. They've not built the nuclear power stations that they promised us years ago, because that's the intent. Drag us into Europe and have Europe yoke us to this commercial system that they've got going over there, but more importantly, the human rights system. So there he is, just another guy. They're all moving on this. We must get the Christians and the Muslims to fight each other. But of course, in the background, we know that China is the ultimate clean-up, and they're knocking down mosques left, right and centre because they've demarcated Islam and mental illness. So, even though Putin's always with China, it's a game. They're all playing it together, All these elites are all operating or commissioned from the Vatican, and it's all about this covenant. You know, your Masonic, your Knights, all these orders, they're all about pulling in and locking us in to this covenant. And if you get to see some of these because our rabbis speaking about it, basically, as were agreed back in the day, they want the world to themselves. They want it shut down. They want everybody gone. So this idea, you know, that's being played around that, oh, you guys are all going to be saved. No. You're not seeing the bigger picture. Even with the Kalergi plan, if you actually apply the Kalergi plan to the actual bigger picture and the agenda that we know they've got, which is to kill, 90% of the population, the Kalergi plan's just there to excite the immigrants to thinking that they're going to be able to take over the West and piss off the West itself by thinking that is what they're aiming to do. No, it's just about creating the shit and that havoc to kick it off and have everybody have it. And that's basically what they're doing. And as I've discussed many times before, the mosque is a bank. It's nothing else. It's just a bank that extorts its money from its communities, and wrapped around it is a religion so that they can use that to create the shame and everything necessary to force the people to put the money in. And it's just another bank. They're all just banks. Everything is banking. And we're going to look at what I've said we're going to look at just to cement that again. Now you've got North Korean troops operating for Russia, said to be in the Ukraine. So, I mean, that picture, I would suggest, is very apt. You know, and then, of course, you've got that penis, Jimmy Savile's vagina. I mean, you know, and people still don't think and see that actually all these figures are actually just crown puppets. They do what the Crown tells them, or the Privy Council. And the Tories, you know, they're all saying, no, you made a mistake. No, they did that deliberately because that's what they were told to do, because this is the shower of shit they want in. Bolshevism, Bolshevism, Bolshevism. And, you know, you're at a loss if you've not studied Bolshevism. Because it's an evil doctrine. And, you know, they carry it out wherever they get power. Look at Russia. Look at Cambodia. Look across Africa. All communist regimes that set up and then start to slaughter. Set up the juntas, the paramilitaries, and then it's slaughter all the way. So they can get their hands on the mineral wealth, the land rights, and basically knock as many of them off as they can by any means, war or by medication. And that is the game. So, you know, people need to get a grip now and wake up and realise that there is no enemies, i.e. one country versus another. It's them at the top operating for this covenant against humanity. Well, I don't even like that word, but it is humanity because they're classed as sea monsters. And again, we'll deepen that understanding of these terms when we look at this piece that we've got for tonight. So, right, so that pretty much covers any nonsense that I've picked out. And we'll see who's joined us, and then we'll crack on. Lex says, evening Wise Asylum, Sean and all, evening Lex, benefactor another week goes already. Time flies when you're busy seeking wisdom. I, Sean, and all you curious minds out there. Well, hello to you, benefactor. And we've got a little leaves and some books. Okay. Jerry says, evening Sean and all, and the Wise Asylum, evening to you, Jerry. Upward Dog says, good evening Sean and all, I hope you're all well. Nice to be back in the asylum. Nice to have you back, Upward. Nice one, and evening to you. Slipknot says, alright Sean, Jacqueline and everyone, evening Slipknot and Jacqueline. Fat Henry says, good evening all, good evening Fat Henry. Me says, and why the new King's Charles banknotes have no crown? Exactly, no crown at all. We don't, England doesn't have a crown right now, it's not subject to the crown, because they're trying to sideline it. It has no monarch. The only tie at this present to this other system is the fact that all these fruitcakes, be the civil servants, judiciary, police, military, MPs, all these shower of shit that are running our state, have took an oath to this foreign entity. So they're all in treason in relation to how England presents it. because England, of course, is the aim to get rid of. And, of course, Trump will make sure of all that when he gets in. And I know there's people out there, you know, that are into English constitutional law and all this malarkey, but the dumb pillocks have done a deal in the background by whatever means, and they think that Trump's going to come in and save them. Well, I'm telling you now, I don't even need to say anything. You will soon see exactly what he's all about very quickly into his next term, because he's going to get in, I think. He's going to get in my opinion. And I think what they're playing at now with all this voting and this shenanigans through Alex Jones and all these people talking about, oh, they're doing this, doing that. They're trying to raise up such an energy that when he does get in, he'll start to say, well, listen, guys, I need you back in. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do that. You're going to have to allow me to do this. It's not normal, but you're going to have to let me do it. And I think they'll capitalise on that massive energy of thank God he's in, and all those that are going to vote for him, that the dictatorship basically is going to be implemented within months of, I think, Donald Trump getting him. So that remains to be seen. That would be my prophecy for what's about to take place from January onwards. We'll wait and see. But that's exactly how I see it playing out. I mean, he's going to turn straight away against Islam. That's going to excite every single Western nation on the planet. So there's going to be fun and games everywhere down the line. But more importantly, if they can get our white boys conscripted, baby boomers, are you listening? It's time to grow up now. I know you've lived your entire life into your 70s without growing up, but it's time you grow up before you pop. You don't want all your nephews being conscripted, because you'll be sat in your living room and the only people playing out outside will be them that want to kill you or turn you into something else. And if you say no, then it's off with your arms and legs, because that's the way they like to play. And of course, this is the ISIS mindset that they've installed everywhere. I'm not presenting that as the mindset of all Muslims. In the same way that most Jews just want to get on, most Christians just want to get on, but it's never the case that those kind of people are moving in power. They don't have the wish to get into power. They just want to get along. But of course, it's the fanatics, the spastics, and the nut jobs that move in them arenas, and of course that's where the sickness is at its thickest, and that's where the play is going to play from. So it's always been the same. Big E says, men honour what lies within the sphere of their knowledge, but do not realise how dependent they are on what lies beyond it. Precisely, absolutely. Because you only see a certain point, don't you? You don't see what's behind it. You're not seeing the full mechanic. So evening, Big E. Mew says, enjoyed your post this week. Hello, everyone. Ori Sean. Ori Mew. Benefact says, good, no crown. Exactly. So it is an opportunity, providing people can wake up. And of course, keep in mind, I mean, when I took the Queen to court, what my aim was, it was not so much to take the Queen to court, it was to show, what I was trying to do was put in on the record the fact that the monarch that everybody took their oath to was a fraud. And therefore, all the oaths that they'd taken were void. And that was my intention and the whole basis for that court case that I carried out way back in the midst of time. And again, today is the same mechanic, in that you've all taken oaths to this fat-fingered freak and his Medici wife without them explaining fully that he's not the King of England. Did he disclose those facts? No. He's a foreign entity, as is the UK on England. That's treason. So, in essence, the oath you've taken is void. So, I've come full circle in relation to what I was trying to do back then. What is it now, 15, 16 years ago or so? The intent was to show that she was in treason, and that all the oaths taken by the judiciary and MPs and the military and the police were null and void because of that very fact. She wasn't upholding the realm. She was a fraud that also void. It's the same thing today. Because all you people that have took this oath are operating the state, albeit in the corporate realm. But the oath you've taken is void. The National Securities Act 2023 doesn't carry for you. Because I've seen that operating in this last year. How you're doing everything contrary. And you're doing it, you're actually doing it. Your grandma, your granddad, your uncle, your auntie, they're out there, you think, doing something good. They're the people that are destroying the country, the nation, the culture. They're stealing your money. They're helping the theft of your estates. They're doing it, and they don't need to do, because the oath they've taken is void. There is no England in that system, and the Crown has absolutely no power whatsoever on England, save for you contracting. So, the importance of this grasping the difference between man and person, and person, human and people, and all these terms, civil, civilian, occupation, they're so important. But most people just don't want to get involved because it takes so much effort. You've got to have a major fire burning in your belly to move to study this stuff. And most people don't have any fire in the belly. It's in the mouth. And they'll spit it out all over the show. And usually it's what they've learned from telly, what their dad told them and their granddad told them, who were just as thick as pig shit as they are today. So nobody's getting anywhere, but we have an opportunity. There is no power coming from the Vatican over England. None. It's free. She's actually free right now. And Graham Moore, I know what your crack is with you, pal. I don't know what it is you've done, but you've got this idea that you're in with Trump. You're a fool. A fool, lad. A fool. You don't understand England properly, is what I would say. Maybe some of them advisors you've got behind you and that have filled your mind with stuff in the past are the ones that have put you on this path. But hey, take responsibility, sunshine. You're your old man. Get a grip. You're going to be disappointed. Let me tell you. The farmers are having their land taken by, again, taxation. Inheritance tax. You've got to look at these major events that have happened in the past, 30 years. CJD killed farming. Foot and mouth annihilated all the small holdings. Who do you think were buying up the land? Or amalgamating it into the National Trust? The Crown. Like they're doing with Accrington Stanley Football Club. They're nicking the land, putting it in a trust and using it, and that's it. Land that belongs to the people. Common land. They're doing it with all the major buildings that belong to the towns. The Civic Hall, the Town Hall, the Market Hall. These are the buildings they want to commandeer, to take away from you. And I'm talking to the natives here today. I'm not talking to these Johnny-come-latelys. It's your heritage that makes up your estate. And these councils, these football clubs and other trusts that they're setting up are taking the land and putting it into a trust, and then they're making money out of it. But more importantly, they've put it in a trust and they're controlling that trust. And they're going to do the same with the remaining farmland. And again, make us completely dependent on the Europe. But that's only for a time, because of course the intent is to demolish 90% of the world's population. That's the ultimate agenda. And they're not quiet about it. It's just they're sneaky in how they do it. And most people just fail to look under the covers a little bit just to say, hang on a minute. How thick am I? And that's what we need. But we have an opportunity. England's free. She's free as a bird, and the oaths you've taken to fat fingers and his crown, which is the Vatican, are null and void. Whether you're a Mason, a Jesuit, is void. Because the Vatican isn't the church anymore, it's the corporate state, the head of it. It's the head of the dragon. And you've got a Jesuit running it. And he's now announced, I think, that the Jews don't have to believe in Jesus to go to heaven. Now, I don't really give a shit about that because religion's religion. Religion is a false thing. It's for the emotion people that have no capacity to think for themselves. They can't apply their own intellect to what they study, what they see, what they read, and what they're told. That's what they're for. So it doesn't really matter because the only heaven that they're talking about, of course, is that you're coming back here. They're going to trap you when you pop and you're coming back. But, of course, they're going to try and block that even. But it's a new start. A reset means to thieve, to steal, to take. That's what reset means in Black's Law. And people still don't know it. So, good no crown says benefactor. Yeah, we have none. Good evening, Sean and fellow inmate, says Paul. Good evening, Paul. Kerry says, love from Ireland, love back to Ireland, Kerry. Judge asks, will you please stand? No. And I watched a video guy where he said to him, well, am I required to do? And he said, no, it's customary. Well, you're not part of the customary rights, are you? You're not in the law society. So he didn't have to stand. Those are the little pointers, you can just knock them off. But ultimately, what you need to do is go in there in equity. They've had it then. He's the trustee who's brought in the claim. Have you brought your checkbook? You know, that's how you have to work it. You can't deal with two titles. And if you're coming in equity, then the legal title as a trustee is the one bringing the claim. And it's usually a solicitor. Isn't it? It's very rare it's the plaintiff. Because everybody's representing somebody else. You says, evening mate sent you a WhatsApp. Is that an egg? It's an egg. So they're sticking eggs up bottoms. If it breaks, it's not your time, son. So basically what they're saying to you there, unless you've had 1,000 cocks up your bum, that egg's going to break. And so there you see the symbolism of the backdoor brigade. And as you told us, Orthodox handed the reins from the Vatican. Well, yes, Vatican II put the entire Roman Church under the command of the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is full-blown Bolshevism. And Putin kissing the Quran, you can see clearly who controls Islam. Yep. Benefactor says, belief is trust or faith without proof, shaped by feelings or culture. Knowledge, however, relies on evidence and reason, making it testable and widely accepted, forming a foundation for sure truth. Yeah, absolutely. I'll just give you an insight into what also I've been speaking about in these live streams as to why that is the case, why religion is so important and so many suck into it. I mean, we've touched on it before in the fact that the way they manipulate the chakras is to fix you below the heart. So the three chakras are in the neck, they're not working properly. And so your heart being your source mind, if you will, that's whole, it's one instrument, it's not divided. It flicks you up to live in your mind, your head, which has got two halves, left and right, good and evil, dark and light. It's divided, so then that's projected out there, isn't it? So then you need religion because you believe that you're doing good to oppose the evil. So it divides you in two straight away. And that religion then is based, the matrix out there that you're playing because it's that division. You're divided in yourself and you need these systems to tell you what to do. But that's on an emotional side and that's fear. Because once you hold you down below the heart, the only thing that's running your little human temple is fear. So you're going to run to whoever it is that helps you to subsidise that fear and keep it at bay. And that's why religion's so important. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Heavenly Father or the real one. It's all to do with the antagonist that were given the role to test you. Yep, so he says, you give me your energy, I can build this great work of the ages, and we can complete and lock in this covenant that were formed way back in the mist of time with Abraham, the guy who were about to murder his son. So, use your intellect on that, not emotion, and you pretty much see what kind of energy that covenant represents. And then look at WEF and you can see what it intends to do. It wants the world to itself, these elites, and they want you out the way. And they want you to do it all by yourself, so that they don't get the karmic kickback. And that's the test. That's the way the ultimate creator of this place has set it up. And you all think you're going somewhere you're not. Because basically you've given up full and utter responsibility for your own life to something else, to someone else, because you're terrified. You don't trust yourself, you've no faith in yourself, because you're living in this brain divided thing and projecting it out. And they're building it. They're building this matrix on that energy that you're giving them. Thing with the word truth equals appearing as true. So if not 100% true, they call it truth. Well, it's their truth, isn't it? Are you believing it? Because that's another thing, isn't it? When you're dependent on these outside forces, you're believing. And they need you to believe, because if you start to know, well, you're not playing. You're not part of the gig, are you? You're cast out there, you're excommunicated. You're not allowed to play out on your own, because that's not what they want. They need every single one of you building this prison. And that's where we're at now. They're scooping it up and locking us in. And then they're going to get rid. Not 100% true equals lie. It's an ism. It is indeed. Sean, it's not sea monster. It's sea monster. Exactly. Precisely. Well, the Holy See. Sea might be spelled different, but it's still representing the waters. And you've got the land law, and you've got the priests. So you've got the kings that run the land, and you've got the priests that create the law. It should have been the canon law when it were under the church, but of course we can see now they've crept in Admiralty and Maritime. And they've been doing it for a long time, so it's not something new. So you're not under canon law, you're under Admiralty and Maritime. And you're drowning. You're underwater. So you're naturally going to be dealt with by Admiralty and Maritime. You're not going to be dealt with the law of the land, are you? It all makes sense, and we're going to go through this tonight, and hopefully it's going to show you the picture so you can keep it inside your mind and hopefully have some confidence to actually use it. It's going to be an interesting one tonight. It's very, very good data. David says, evening all seeking knowledge, evening to you, David. Martin says, would that be a fresh or hard-boiled egg? Well, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it would have to be... Well, it'd have to be something wrong with you if you could get a soft egg up your ass. Not that I've ever tried, to be fair. But yeah, one does wonder. Does one not? So I don't know. We in here of knowledge, obviously, with higher consciousness. Because you're not running on belief, are you? You're listening and you're computing it in your mind. Does it make sense? And then hopefully you're going out there and you're having a look. So that you can go, okay. And if you don't agree, good, fetch it here, put it up there, and we'll have a look at it, we'll examine it. Because I'm not all seeing, all knowing. You know what I'm saying? I'm not, and I don't claim to be. But I know I'm quite a long way down the line on it, But yeah, we're always open for good debate. Don't come on here screaming and shouting, because you'll get your drift. But because it's not fair on you guys if I allow assholes to take up the time. I mean, you might enjoy the bit of the spotlight, but ultimately, I give short thrift quickly just to get them out of the way so that we can carry on with the White Asylum, we're going to give the lunatics a little time in here. They can have a little peep and have the say, but if they are lunatics, we don't want them in here. We're just going to make things shit. And we don't have time. 2 hours goes very quickly. Bucket of Q. Thing is with manifestation, I've put egg on table manifesting a boiled egg. Should I try it? It's not my business what you want to try and do with a boiled egg, me. It's entirely up to you, but you can let us know the results next week. Sounds like a pigeon. Sense offender. It's impossible to be out of the system unless you're homeless. Now you see, that's the concept that was grown by the Freeman movement. Oh, you must get out. You cannot exist with it. It's impossible. Well, no, it's garbage. Otherwise, why would they give you a certificate of interest if it wasn't usable by some method? You see, that's the wrong way to look at it, and that's the way that a lot of people have gone, that path. Fine, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. I'm not telling you it's right or wrong, but that isn't right for me. That's not how I see this gig. But so I disagree completely with that, and we'll, keep watching, and hopefully by the end of this one, you will understand why I hold that truth, and I've held it forever, because I just know, I used to say to John Harris, John, come on, lad, you're asking permission, you're applying for freedom. If you're applying for freedom, somebody's giving you permission. How the fuck can you be free? You're joining something, and if they can give it, they can take it away. Yeah, life is it. Yeah. Because John were on a mission. John were working for the state, the system. Don't forget his grandfather was the chauffeur for the Queen Mother. You know what I'm saying? He's moved out and in, up there, playing. So I disagree, sense offender, and I suggest you watch, and you might just get a glimpse as to what I'm saying and why. Mark says, evening all, Sean and all, evening to you, Mark. Public and private, precisely. Me's got the game. Me understands the crack. So, yeah. Martin says, from chicken to duck, and then to an ostrich. An ostrich egg. You're on to fisting then, chaps, I think. Sense offender, even if you work for cash only and pay taxes, you still pay taxes on everything you buy. You see, straight away now, sense offender, I can tell you why you see in that paradigm. And that's because you're identifying you as that entity. Okay? I can see it's plain as day for me to see. I'll read out what you said again. Even if you work for cash only and pay taxes, you still pay tax on everything you buy. You are identifying yourself with the fiction. So you've not shifted yourself out of the paradigm because you've not fully grasped the situation, the reality of it. Okay? And as I said, keep watching. We're gonna help you to see what I've just explained to you to be correct. Me says, fear is in the head. It's all in your head. So forget your head and you'll be free. The writing's on the wall. Yeah, to a point, but fear is here. They keep you stuck down there. The 3 chakras in the negative. You've got the root, you've got the sacral, you've got the solar plexus. I've done videos on this for you. I've shown you how I've seen the way they manipulate the chakras. And that's where fear is born. And each of those 3 chakras are operating in fear. So when your thing shoots up here, you're projecting out of these 2 lobes, left and right. Good, evil, dark, light. Male, female. Whereas this here, your real source, mind, the kingdom within here, it's whole. It's not divided. And this is why the battle between the heart and the head is so impossible for people when you're stuck in the head. Because it's whole. It doesn't see a division. It just knows. And when you're following that, to everybody out there, you've gone completely crazy. Because the way you're behaving, the way you're talking, the way you're thinking, they can't compute it. And all it does is excite the fear. So they think you've gone crazy. You know, I mean, and that were happening to me in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? As you start to follow this, you're breaking down the matrix. And everybody that's stuck in the matrix thinks you're broken. And that's exactly what it is. But I've been doing this now for so long, it's when I venture into here and look at the divisions, which I do, obviously, to present to you guys, that this one laughs its tits off. It's laughing its little arse off at just how ridiculous I used to be before I stepped on this journey. Tax pays for all our problems and we don't see, says me. Sense Offender says we are excommunicated. Yep. Brexit was the second Reformation. Most trusts are just charities and companies. We have a charity reg and a corporate reg, Regis. Yeah, benefactors. We've become the benefactors to the debt system now. And the trustees, we're not the beneficiaries. But that's because you're coming in on legal title. Because, as I said before, you're still identifying yourself as that entity. You are fooling yourself there, me old China. Where are we? We are free, but we don't know how to assert it. Knowing they don't have lawful authority is the first step, and there is no legal obligation to register anything. No, but it's been done already. That's what we're saying. The trap is the fact that our mothers and fathers do it when we're yay big. That's where the game is. So you can sit there and go, oh, it's not right, it's all not fun in here, they're not this going. It's too late for that. That's not an argument. That's an argument that you keep hold of when you're not taking responsibility for everything in your world. Because instead of going, okay, that's the game, that's the gig, how do I approach it? You're going, oh, it's not right, no, they're not playing, it's not fair, and then you don't do fuck all. You moan about it. You just keep watching videos and going, ah! And all you're doing is bolstering that cry. You take responsibility properly and you're going, oh, right, so that's the game, is it? Okay. Game on. That's the difference. You get me? Remember, man, private person, public person, authority is beneficiary. Says me. We, man, have a person, fiduciary attached. Yep, you discussed that last week. Don't be scared to be fiduciary. Absolutely. It's your right. Know it. Of your estate. A lobster alive, trust me, is a sea monster. Benefactor, the Committee 300, a powerful group, was founded by the British aristocracy in 1727 and rules the world. They call themselves the Olympians. Sense Offender, anything is private, there is no public. Of course there's a public. It's running the whole scene. Come on, Sean, don't tell me you're not paying council tax and tax which makes you an accessory and a complicit in a system continuity. No, I don't pay council tax. In fact, the last time I owned a property that was owing council tax, I sent a letter to the courts and said, listen, you've sent this bill to the wrong person. I don't own this property. You need to send the bill to the council. And they shut up. I never heard another thing, and they paid it for about 5 years before they managed to kick me out. Alright? So I haven't paid council tax, and that's about 2008. Or something like that. So there's an assumption, Sense Offender, that's incorrect. Of course I'm paying tax, VAT. You can't get away from it. Does it bother me? No, because I'm not crying about it. I'm moving always to work out a way that I don't have to pay. I mean, I'm going to have to pay it in its initial because I'm still operating as trustee. Be careful there, young man, with your assumptions. Marty says, I've not found anyone locally that understands the birth certificate. The mindset prevents sight of the mind because you're looking at it from here. not here. That's your brain, this here. It's just a computer. And most people bet it in one side or the other. You know what I mean? There are some tests you can take, even on watching videos, that show you which side's operational. And you can also get a glimpse as to whether they're working together as well. Obviously, sense offender, they have no authority of a plant that ain't being patented. So no authority to claim a plant, which is why they went synthetic. But then they are changing the genetics of certain crops, and then they do claim ownership. Same with the cattle, and the like they've just done with all the humans when they did all this messing about from 2020 onwards. They've changed the genetics and patented it years ago. You're now owned if you did the deed. We are not the benefactor, we are customers. We are if we're going corporate, which they all have. Ulick, hey Sean and chat, evening Ulick. Sense, look into a legal name is the name that identifies a person for legal, administrative and other official purposes. A person's legal birth name generally is the name of the person that was given. Well, you might change your mind slightly on that. For the purpose of registration of the birth, of which then appears on a birth certificate. Cos, 1973. Gives it Space Invaders, dog shit, and 100%. We like it. Evening, Cos. Big E, the real trick is to operate under full commercial liability in every single thing you do. To operate under? Or do you mean over? Big E. Sense offender. So you get services for nothing. They won't accept payment via crypto. Anyway, the show must go on. Absolutely, chaps and chapesses. Without further ado, let's crack on. Now, pay attention, because, I mean, all I'm trying to do in these last year is build that concept in your mind, because for all the stuff I've learned in all these years, putting this together that I've done for a year now, Neil, well, no, it's not a year, for 10 months, is it? 8 months? 10 months, nearly. Has really focused. It's made me focus, and I gave up the magic, which helped me a whole massive way because I can retain. And what's happened in this last 10 months is the concept now is forming. It's properly formed in my mind, so that every time we get something, I can respond to it. Straight away, bang, I've got this, oh right, it needs that, it needs this, it needs that. And very rare do I have to look for any particular act or anything. It's just, I sort of know how to respond. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and that, as I said, is because I now understand that the concept has started to form properly in my little mind. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's bloody groovy. And this, I know now, is what needs to be done. Everybody needs to know this stuff as a concept fully. Right, so there's the Matrix. Dun, 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 out there in the world. It's a monster. And it's built of the covenant from Abraham, the baby murderer, with his fruit-bat god that demanded it, who you would call Satan or Lucifer or whatever. It doesn't matter what name you give it, it's the same geezer. Right? So the law ultimately is a system that creates and recoups money. Yeah, so the law, if we look at it in commercial, is a system that creates and recoups money. So law and money are intricately integrated. They're really the flip side of the same story. It takes the law and the legal system to create what we call money, or what we use today, yeah? Do we all agree with that? Is that understood? The law is a system that creates another system called money, which has evolved over many thousands of years to ultimately form the current world system, which can which can be an aid to the hologram matrix we all exist within. So in creating that system that we all give our energy to, they've built this world, which is in sync with the covenant made by Abram, the child killer, would be, kind of thing, yeah? The mindset that God requires. The matrix has the function to bind and bond the world population, to entrain that population to come willingly and by consent, to voluntarily bind themselves as indentured or bonded servants to that system. The beneficiaries of the matrix have built the matrix in order all tangible resources, or the real wealth of the world, except us, the resources from the land, from the sea, and from nature in its entirety itself, so that they can be harvested into this matrix through your sweat equity, and more importantly, emotional energy through your worship of these religions that they've set up. Yeah, the religion is consistently binding you to this system on belief that you need it, because they're battling good versus evil, because you're living here. You're trapped in this left-right paradigm. Yep. In all its forms, to ensure those resources are available to the beneficiaries to build the global civilization that we live in today. And when you look at it with the glamour removed, so basically when you stop looking at it with your emotions and you use your intellect, you can actually see that that's the case. And the Matrix film was showing you that. As the films depict, the world is in fact a global prison for your mind, from which all else follows. Does that make sense? Yeah, does that make sense? So the two pillars you see everywhere, the Twin Towers, all this. Vertical rule, if we go to Sean Ross. Okay, they're getting rid of the vertical rule and putting in an horizontal rule. Okay? Vertical rule was kings on the land, priests at the Vatican. Land resources, priests met the law. Yep. So everything the law dictates is what is created on the land in order they can pull in the resources. And of course, you're on the land, or were, and you're that resource as a product, a concept that they create while you're still in the womb, the moment mum runs off to the health visitor, midwife, doctor, or whomever. The concept of the human is in the womb, and they afford to that human all the rights of person. It's in the Catholic Church's catechism. It's also then in the United Nations doctrine that they're administrating that product. All right? We've glimpsed it. I've put it in these live streams. Might not have made sense to you then. Hopefully, it's starting to make sense. So you're no longer man, you're a product. And a sea monster at that. The construct itself and believing in it is an imprint placed within your mind. It manifests those thoughts directly onto the hologram. So they implant it in your mind, you take it on and then project it out there, and you're feeding the matrix, you're making the matrix, because they're building it on your energy, on your sweat, on your playing in that game. So we're all doing it. They, them, no. They're just the people that understand this system and that are operating with this covenant or with Satan to build the prison. Yeah, so there's no difference really between they and you, save for that they're aware of it. But not that they're dealing and operating for Satan. They're more fixed to it because they're more fruit bat. Can you see how it's been inverted? They think they're climbing the ladder when actually they're sliding down the slippery snake. But the glamour, i.e. wealth, fancy pants things and such like, the gravy train, convinces them that they're climbing up the ladder. Yep. That's why Jesus didn't have a castle and an army and all that malarkey. Okay, and now, you know, don't get put off, oh, he's a fucking religious. I'm not religious. Never have been. Never needed it. Never wanted it. Never gained sustenance from it. I am not a religious guy. Okay? But to apply yourself to this game, you have to first recognise that the system, because it's all about building this covenant of Abraham, is what the Bible's about. It's what the secret society is about. It's what the Kabbalah inverted is about. They stole it off the Druids and inverted it like they did before. It's a cycle. It keeps going and going because there's a game on. Man was created. One guy said, they're shit, these clay things. I don't think they're any good. And he said, all right, you test them, God. We'll build here. We'll build that. That's yours. Test them. And everybody fails. Especially the elite. Especially the elite. Anyway, that's not my problem. Now you can understand the importance of the media, television, film, art, and today's social media. And entertainment, and most importantly, the need for the priestcraft to fully control it. Because they're giving you that picture. You're taking it in, taking it as real, and feeding it out into this projected matrix that they're building in the physical. So it is a simulacrum. It's a copy of the original creation. But the way that it's the idea of simulacrum is being played out by some of these players is again to take you off the truth of it. Because it's a fantasy, because you're not involved. You know, this is what they do, these shows. They play with the data, but always massage your need to not take responsibility as though it's separate and it's their fault over there, they, them, and not you. So Alex Jones, all these people, they feed into that projection so that you never think, hang on a minute, what part am I playing in this? What am I feeding? The very thing required if you want to travel the spiritual path. Okay? And that's what they do. And so you're being entertained. You're getting what you want, but you don't have to face yourself. Can you see how they work, that them people work? And so they know they're doing that, but you're doing it. So it's not they and you, it's you. Together, doing it, all of you. That's what's so difficult for people to grasp. And because fear won't let you face yourself, because then you have to really look at yourself. And that's difficult. And especially as you get older, it's very difficult to look at yourself. Especially if you've used enough drugs and alcohol to put that conscience out to play. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. It is the means to forming the plan of the manifestation into the dualistic minds of the human monster. So that's why they have to control, absolutely, entertainment. Yeah, in all its forms. Any method of communication to the masses has to be in their hands. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yeah. So you get all these people that say, we're opposing it. No, they get 14 billion views. The internet loves them. Everything loves them. Because they're playing for the same. They're just pretending they're in opposition and people suck it up. In the study of history and in the study and comprehension of esoteric lore, the study and understanding of the eras of history, then the Egyptian, Sumerian, Babylonian, pre-Roman and the Roman, etc., there has been a continuum of this matrix, this game, Yeah. The esoteric schools, if you will, they're training. They train the elite, but more importantly, the lesser elites. Yeah, the elites are giving it to them, initiated from being, babies, basically. Especially the firstborn. Because they're the ones that are going to pass the baton, take the baton and do the continuum. So the esoteric schools, the mystery schools, and they're not all bad, because it's ultimately up to you when you traverse through these mystery schools, what you're picking up. It's two sides in it. And it's, like I said, you're going through the castles, or you go the Grail. And I went through each castle. There's a castle there that's offering you fame and fortune. One's offering you all the sexual satisfaction you can imagine. It's all these different castles, and you're traversing through them. And it's what you're picking up in there that's determining your path, basically. That's how I learned and what I saw and experienced in the 7-year mystery school gig in the 90s. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. So this is nothing new, this is nothing new at all. It's a continuum, and it takes them a long time, many ages, in order to get to a point where they can call it the end game. We're back to a point where they've amassed the global land, the people, the powers in it, unto themselves, and then they keep trying to do this, and it goes completely tits up. That's the cycle if you actually look at history. And then it starts again. The esoteric schools to train the elite, and the bloodlines to the game. So the esoteric schools are more importantly for the lesser elites, the bloodlines, the lower class bloodlines, to keep them in the game. And this is how the knowledge is passed on. They are not by definition more intelligent than the rest, and I've said this before. These people out there are not more intelligent. They've been given their portion of the great work, which puts them at an advantage. So, let's say if you're here and you know this much, but this guy were taught that much, then by definition you're going to see him as more intelligent as you, because he sees the game differently. It's not about intelligence, it's about what you're given. How big the picture is that you can see. And more importantly, you're all in it. And when you're surrounded by the glamour, i.e. bets me prizes, cash, power, whatever it is that's your gig, you're happy enough to stay within that bubble. You're no longer ever going to go and get the chance to go through that mystery school. To really test your worth, as it were. You know what I'm saying? So it's a continuum, this thing. It never ends. It just keeps going and keeps going. So they've been educated to the great work, and for the inclusion of the general masses, they have the secret societies and the initiations. So the spell check must be gone a bit crazy. So the general masses, for us, it's the secret societies and the initiations that you go through to compartmentalise the adherent to the building of the physical mechanical matrix. Yeah? So the mystery schools are for the certain folks, and in the general run of the population, it's the secret societies and the initiations that you're going to go through, which are going to compartmentalise you to the role they've already decided they want you to play. So that's the game. That's how they fix the great work of the ages as a constructive build, as it were, and get everybody to do it. The rest, you get religion. The basic bottom feeder, fear-ridden systems for those kind of people that need it. There is a primary belief system, okay, when that you class as the inner circle, which in turn controls the outer circle. So you know these concepts. There's always an inner circle and an outer circle. And then it just, from the pyramid Because we're down and down and down and down until you get to the bottom where there's the most people with the least, whether that's money, power, or anything. There's the biggest majority at the bottom with the least of everything. Until you get right to the top and you've got the eye of Shaitan looking over everything. Because he knows everything. Because he's sitting at the top of the pyramidal system. So there's a primary belief, the inner circle, which in control controls the outer circle. The overall mechanic is to form a belief system, which is inherently lacking in reality, which forms a mindset of absolute limitation underwritten by fear and survival. So the foundation of this system is fear and survival, which limits you. And as I've said before, in that lower three chakras, once you're fixed in there, you're being driven entirely by the survival and fear. Yeah, and if you didn't watch them, they're only shorts. Go back to the 666, I think I called it, and whatever. But that's my understanding of the way they play and control the human monster. And so you have an entrained population that acts on a belief that what is required of them is beyond the free will of the self and is a commandment in terms of the nature of law, when in fact such belief confounds the source mind, forcing the human monster to project from the dualistic brain, foregoing the inherent creative force within, and thus a failure to recognise that the obedience to the laws of the matrix has been gained by the priesthood, by the consent of the programmed, without any recognition that they are free to not contract. Yeah? Do you get that? You might have to read that again at some point. All law fundamentally is contract. It is a universal law. It's above and beyond the world system. But to recognise that set of law, one must first understand that the real translation of Genesis 1. And that more importantly, Genesis 1 is not Genesis 2. And I've gone through that, have I not? It's so fundamental to understanding the two, that they are two separate creation stories. And of course, we've gone through, haven't we, recently, the proper interpretation from the Hebrew of Genesis 1. Yeah, so the ultimate creative force is way beyond the Elohim or Satan and all his gang. So Genesis 1, you would consider it, or I would consider it in these terms. You're pulling in and projecting out from the source, and it's whole. There's no division in it. Yeah? It's whole. You get the whole picture. No division. No need for religion. Because you're not afraid. But what they've done through Genesis 2, because you're afraid to do that, they've set up another system. Yep. And it's dualistic. It's Janus, you might say, even. You're seeing from two directions. It's not one, it's two. Dark, light, left, right, good and evil, male, female, ad infinitum. So to be in contract simply means voluntary consent to an agreement that willing and aware beings enter into. And so when you really understand the nature of the world system, the legal system and... What happened then? That weird. So I'm sorry about that. So when you really understand the nature of the world system, the legal system and how it binds the population, you understand that it's created to get the world population to entrain itself and bind itself by voluntary consent. Because you are volunteering to consent, which is what I said before when I'm saying most people are coming from the standpoint, oh, look what they're doing, they shouldn't be doing that, and this is what they're doing. You're not taking responsibility. So you've voluntarily consented to not take responsibility. You're not functioning from here. You're laying it on the outside, the remedy, the cause of your problems out there in the matrix. Do you get what I'm saying? This is how deep this goes, this voluntary idea of contract. And in yourself, you have volunteered not to live by your own heart, your source, that kingdom within. You've given it up and that's a contract. It's an agreement. Yeah? Do you get that? So to blame something outside of yourself for your predicament is you've agreed to contract that actually it's somebody else's fault. Does that make sense? So we appear to be at a crossroads today, a bloody big one as well, by the way. There's a choice here that every individual being is absolutely required to make at this time. And the more conscious of this you are, the deeper the decision is you'll make and the consequences thereof. Again, you choose it. And that choice is to continue to allow themselves to be bound and bonded, or choose freedom from a holographic construct that is progressively diminishing their individual directive principle as a projection. The human transits from the duplicitous brain, or left and right, positive, negative, good and evil, light and dark standpoint. So now we're at Plato's shadows on the wall. If you understand what he was trying to say to you through that descriptive he gave us in the Republic. Yeah? Are you projecting out, still blaming that's a contract? Then outside is going to determine your timeline. Do you have faith in you, your source, that there's something much beyond this? And do you have the balls to follow it? You see? Can you see? It's a choice. It's a voluntary choice at the core of your existence. Project out there, it's going to deal with it. Or have faith in you, in yourself. So Plato's allegory of the cave begins with an image of prisoners chained in a cave, who are unable to turn their heads. These prisoners can only view the wall in front of them. Directly behind the prisoners is an infinitely burning fire, and between the fire and the prisoners is a pathway where the puppeteers walk. The puppeteers hold up images of animals and real objects that cast shadows upon the wall that the prisoners are viewing. The puppeteers also make noises to go along with the puppets. However, since the prisoner cannot turn their heads, they are unaware of what is actually happening behind them. Okay? So that's the allegory is you're fixed to outside, you're not looking inside, which you could say is behind you. So he uses the allegory of not being able to turn around. Now you can add that, you've started to realise, people have started to talk about this fact that when you die, you don't want to go to the light, you're about to turn and look at the dark. Otherwise, you're going back into the reincarnation system. It's the same analogy. So these prisoners perceive the shadows as the purest form of reality and do not know what is actually creating the shadows. To the prisoners, a world beyond the shadows does not exist. It is also evident that the prisoners do not even have enough curiosity to discover what is truly happening. And there is Plato's depiction. Yeah? You're looking there and only looking at the shadows, and this is where it's really going on. Behind you. So when I used to be on the Daily Telegraph the last time, my sort of pseudonym was Look at the Fire. And if you've studied the Greek, you're going to know what I were meaning. Because back in the day, the readers of the Telegraph were in the main educated people. Anyway, so there's another allegory just to show you that this is nothing new. And the dilemma is also nothing new. So the beast system to which the Bible speaks is best described as an energetic harvesting system. One question and dualistic dilemma we find out there in the world of seeking remedy shows itself thus. Do you take control of how you interact with the system, or do you remove yourself from the system? So now we're on with what you were saying, Sense Offender. Okay? Because you're of the latter. And I would say that going off what you wrote, because you're still identifying yourself as that fictitious entity. And you need to see that that's what you're doing to move forward. Hopefully we can help you. So we must begin with the fundamentals in terms of definitions. We all have status within the world system. Most people in the world hold the status of a bonded surety. Okay? What does that mean? The word bond is a root of the word bondage. It's a root of attachment. It's a root of the word to bind. Latin roots of the world religion means to bind again. So the word religion, in its Latin root, actually translates as to bind again. Okay? So that's what religion does. It continuously binds you to the beast system, regardless of what religion you're in. And the higher up you are, the more bound you are to it. Right? So when you don't want to do it, they call you what? A heretic. Or they excommunicate you. Or if you're a Muslim and you're not paying money into a bank, you get shamed. Same mechanic. So religion as a term in its Latin root means to bind again. Okay? So in the study of religion, we understand that people voluntarily choose to bind themselves to a belief system which serves the dualistic idiom of dark and light, good and evil. And so therefore, the contractual volunteered choice is to give these external systems command over your body to protect you because you believe you're in the light fighting the dark. You get me? See, there's nothing easy about this game when it gets into reality. And that's where we are. Look at the state of the world today. Look at the state of the world. 3 religions dragging all the fanatics into the exact opposite. Well, let me rephrase that because the Talmud's so ingrained in both Judaism or Rabbinic Judaism and Islam, it's got Christians operating and acting directly contrary to its own doctrine. And they're still calling themselves Christians. Yep. That's the degree to which choosing that external entity to be your Lord and Master turns you stupid. That's the measure, if you like. Yeah? They're actually running around in direct opposition to the doctrine they're claiming. That's the degree of stupidity, giving yourself up to an external entity forces you to be. That's called natural law. What is surety? Surety is a part of the root of the word assurance or insurance. It is basically one who guarantees something. So if you're lending me £1,000, but you're not happy that I'll pay you back, you're going to want some kind of security, aren't you? You're going to say, well, so you're going to want some form of security to make sure you get paid back. And we also term that collateral, okay? So you want some collateral to show that you're going to receive your £1,000 back. So then I have to find either some form of property in my control to offer up if I fail, or I find a friend who will offer himself up as the surety for the loan. So guarantor, we're talking about here. So my friend will assure you that I will pay it back, and that if I do not, then he'll step in as the assurer or to guarantee the obligation, and he'll pay it. Right? So that's what surety is. You're guaranteeing that whatever it is that's classed as a debt or an obligation is going to be paid. So that's the surety side of you being or acting as the legal title, the trustee, okay, who holds the liabilities. Now, bondage. Noun, slavery or involuntary servitude. Synonymous, prison, restraint, captivity. The state of being bound by or subjected to some external power or control. External power. Okay? A religion is a form of captivity, isn't it? The financial system is a form of captivity, isn't it? And as we can see now, actually at the core, they're more of a prison because of the restraint and the serfdom, the confinement that they demand. Surety. Noun, a person who takes responsibility for another's performance of an undertaking. For example, they're appearing in court or paying a debt. So, a person who takes responsibility for another's performance. Right? So the birth certificate title as the legal title is liable for the debt because it's the surety for the debt, and you go in as a person, you're then taking responsibility for another's performance. Okay? But the choice, again, comes down to, are you putting the effort in to learn this stuff, or are you just going to let it carry on? That's you volunteering to suffer the external monster because you're not doing the due diligence to pull yourself out of that bondage, because you've not took responsibility for the fact, like it or nay, that is the position you were born into, and it's the position you've remained under to this very day. As a choice, it may have been you had no knowledge of that choice at one point, but I know I'm talking to people who know this, okay, but still make the choice not to put in the due diligence. As a choice. You have volunteered to contract with that system because you can't be asked. Do you get me? What I'm saying here? That's the depth of it. It's the decision you've made. Crying and moaning and look what they're doing. You're still giving that out there the power to arbitrate your life. Okay? It's so important that this concept becomes who you are, because then that fire will burn inside you and you're going to start to make the effort. You're not going to watch Coronation Street. Yeah. You're not going to go and play a round of golf. You're not going to be watching porn for 6 hours. You're going to make the effort. So that is what a bondage surety is. We are a bondage surety. We have willingly allowed ourselves to be attached by bondage as a guarantor of a debt system possessed in the surname. This is commerce. It is literally the construct of how sureties attach themselves to debt obligations. The primary surety relationship we are bound to is called a franchise. It's a franchise of a corporation called the United Kingdom. Okay? And of course the United Kingdom is what? It's a straw man for the Crown. The Crown is a straw man for the Vatican. Yeah? The Vatican is a straw man for the Holy See banking families as beneficiaries to this system. The Rothschilds. Because, you know, Sabotage Sevi that we looked at the other week. Yeah? That's where it's at. He claimed to be the Messiah. And Jacob Frank claimed it also as a reborn version. This is where it's at, people. This is why Rothschilds are involved. The Kandori, the Sassoon, the Warburgs. Yeah? All these that we've looked at. This is why it was handed to the Jews in 1940 for wrongs to be righted. Because we're dealing here with the covenant from Abraham's time, when they shafted Israel, Egypt, and screwed it up. The original data and knowledge from Egypt, we know as the Druids, up here in Blighty, specifically Ireland. That is the original ancient Egyptian knowledge. But we only see pharaohs back to what? These dynasties, these fruitcakes, and think that's what Egypt is. And they've inverted everything. I mean, originally it wasn't Amun-Ra, it was Ra-Harakti. And it wasn't Thoth, it was Tehuti. And that those are the names given from this knowledge when it was Atlantean knowledge. It goes way beyond. What we know and think we know is all the inversion of that knowledge that was stolen by these fruitcakes. So that's what it is. And we have discussed this in previous live streams. So we're talking about the United Kingdom, but this is true of every country of the world. Every country is a corporation, which is a fiction in law. All major countries and all minor countries, except for a few, which I think there are a couple in Africa, are corporations that have been put into bankruptcy. Therefore, bankruptcy rules exist and are in full control of the corporations. So all our nations are operating under bankruptcy. They each produce a monetary system that creates debt instruments, meaning the initial debt grows exponentially and cannot be paid off. So once these banking families print the money and then sell it to a government interest, a debt's already been created immediately. And that debt is to these families. The debt instruments under the nature of commerce or commercial relationships have become the global system. And when an individual living being is born, a franchise is created attached to those bankrupt corporations. So it's no different than if I wanted to run McDonald's business. I have to go to the parent corporation and I have to buy a franchise, and it gives me a license to operate that franchise. with the name and the logo and all the obligations to fulfill the contract and to stay within the parameters of the brand of the corporate franchise. And if you break them rules, a charge is going to be made, isn't it? The relationship to the bankrupt corporation called the United Kingdom operates in exactly the same way. It is the same commercial function as the straw man. It is not so much a straw man, it is a franchise. So the franchise starts its existence as a bankrupt entity. So that's what they're forming when you're born. So you're born, and there's a little time period before mum or dad, usually dad, signs off with the midwife and registers that event, and off it goes to the registrar. And then there's a second registration, isn't there? When you've come home, baby's home, a week or two later, dad or mum goes into the registry office and registers it again. Now, keep that in mind because it's important, okay? That time scale, it's important. Now then, where are we? When we voluntarily accept the relationship to that franchise to operate in commerce in the public system, we accept the bondage surety status, which means we are bound to the debt that's created in the name of that franchise in perpetuity, or until it's recorded dead, i.e. death certificate. The answer to this binding is that we have to release ourselves. The flesh and blood man is not a fiction. The human concept is, and the Vatican affords the rights of person to that concept before you are actually born. That's the concept that's created when you, as a mother, off to health visitor, doctor or whomever. Straight away, the concept's there, it's recorded with the Vatican. And this is why there's a difference between the mother and the father. The mother in this system operates directly under the Vatican, and it's virgin. This is where virgin comes in on the waters. And it gets complex, and we'll not go into that now, but we will in a further live stream. We'll explain more precisely why the mother's trust as the grantor is directly with the Vatican. Because it's the father's surname, the sins of the father. Yeah? That then sign off the product of that, the fruit of the womb as the concept, into the state control, and the surname birth certificate is then created. Yeah? Very important, that information. So there's a difference between the mother and the father in this event called you being born. Yeah, even ultimately the state operates for the Vatican, we know this. But originally there had to be a separation of church and state, and the way they've mimicked this is that the grantor trust, the mother, on a maiden name, isn't classed as a citizen, and therefore is directly connected to the Vatican. Not until father's surname is implemented and signed off and witnessed by the midwife is the product put under state jurisdiction, and then the point at which you tied and binded to the franchise of the bankrupt corporation or state as it used to be, the United Kingdom. Does that make sense? Right, so let me just... Now, this is again important, and I saw this week. They're having another bash at this volunteer shit. Just like Cameron did when he came in 2010 with the big society idea. Didn't really take off. But now they're trying it again under this shafted, this arsewipe. He says, if you notice the current Bolshevik government under Jimmy Savile's vagina, a.k.a. Keir Starmer, is calling out for volunteers without disclosing the facts surrounding the term volunteer. You don't have to, we have to find it. So I'm going to give it. Now, as we know, this failure to disclose the facts is the standard practice of the Covenanters, be they civil servants, kings or queens, and indeed presidents. But this play also goes for the judiciary in direct contradiction to the rules of contract. Yet it goes on and binds with the same veracity. So we know it goes on. We have to accept that it goes on. We can't cry, because you're then putting it in their hands to change their stance. They're not going to change their stance on their own fruition. Can you see what I'm saying about this? Take responsibility. We know they do it, but that's the situation. They're not going to change it on their own bat. Accept it, acknowledge it, take responsibility for that position. Okay? Then you're going to get somewhere. Now, if it's not informed, it's not consent. If you're not informed, you cannot give informed consent. So it's based on a fraud and deception. And yet, it is not up to us to find all the facts before we offer up our... I've put not. It's up to us to find the facts of the matter before we offer up our energy to contract. Yeah, which is what I just said anyway. By taking full and absolute responsibility and letting go of the concept that, no, there was not full disclosure, that it was a fraud, we fail to show capacity to settle our own affairs in commerce. And yet, in truth, now this is where it gets clever, and you all know this stuff, everything we attempt when trying to reverse the trust position is that we're showing competence, aren't we? We know that we have to show competence. This is why we get cross, because we're not competent. And instead of recognising that we're not competent, we... And you're wasting your time then, because you're off going... You're not going, I must get competent. Right? Even though sleight of hand is being played, we should be at least competent to ask the questions that would expose the deception. To rely on the fraud position is to fail in one's own due diligence. Would you not accept that? Because they're not going to tell us. They're bound by oath and by act to not tell us until we show competency. And then they're not telling us, we're just doing it. You get me? So we're not running away and going, oh, I don't want fuck all. I'm going to live like a caveman. Which you can do if you want and you're happy with. That's fine. That's not the way. That's not what this system is. That's the cop-out. It's a cop-out. But if you're happy, who am I to say any different for you personally? I'm not. And so I won't. The rule of the game from the perspective of the system is to get voluntary consent, no matter what, and to gain contract. We have, you know, the nature of a valid contract, one of which is full disclosure of, one of which is full meeting of the minds. So we know we've not got this, which means that I understand and you understand the full terms of our agreement. The bottom line, maxim principle in the esoteric system is a phrase which states, I went off, I don't know what I've written there. Now this is what I was saying before, you see, and this is what we fail to recognise again. Hidden in plain sight. Okay? So there's the sort of hint. And you don't see it until you start crying, because you know that there's no meeting of the minds, etc., etc. But there is a meeting of the minds because you've done it. Just because your mind's not up to scratch, you've still met minds. It's a contract. Isn't it? Isn't it? You get what I'm saying? Because when you do take that off and come back to, well, this is the situation, hidden in plain sight tells you it's there somewhere. Find it. Right? But what does that really mean? It's hidden to those who don't have eyes to see, and it's in plain sight if your eyes are open. Now, it's not about going to Specsavers and getting some better gigs. It's about putting in the effort. Not watching Coronation Street, not playing with yourself on Pornhub, and not playing golf. Is it? It's not the way it is. So if you want to open your eyes, you've got to study the data. So we lean on the idea that it's not because they didn't tell us. But the bottom line is that it's all hidden in plain sight, which requires us to take full responsibility to open ourselves to a path of walking the path to freedom, because ultimately it's a matter of conscious effort on our part. We are diminishing our own capacity if we fail to carry out the due diligence, which means we are disempowering ourselves and we remain in bondage. That is the system. To fully engage, we have to accept the system and play its game. Okay? Do we get that? That's the game. You can cry better to play it. The rules are, its secrets are there to see in plain sight through the symbols that we have been set up, that we have set up in the construct, through the language in the law and the language we speak every day. We don't truly understand it. So we have to get to the core of the meaning before we're able to understand the franchise that we have been surreptitiously put under through the corporation in order to be able to then have the power to free ourselves. It takes real effort. The choice is this: take the benefits as your personal choice, like the majority of people, or remove yourself from the bondage to be in control of self and have the capacity to work with the world system without being bonded or bound to it, and utilise your capacity. There are two titles: equity and legal. They have created an estate. They have to create an estate for you to be able to access, to get rid of all this debt. And the estate is based on your dominion rights to land. Not ownership, dominion. I know you know this. Under equity, you are the beneficiary. Under legal, you are the trustee. The gospel story is the way out. And I've touched on this before. Okay? There's a reason why they have to get rid of it. It's the way out. Okay? Jesus was the master of self. He taught the way and asked you to follow. He did not speak of worship. He said follow. And he also said, my people will perish through lack of knowledge. Okay? He raised the dead. He made the blind see. He walked on the waters of commerce. He settled the sea and pulled the seamen back to the land. So he didn't raise dead people that had died the body dead. He didn't fucking do that because it's physically impossible. But if you're a believer of nonsense, you'll believe that. He didn't make somebody that were blind in their eyeballs see. He made them, those who were blind to the truth, see the truth. And he didn't walk on fucking water because they didn't have surfboards then. Okay, you can only get on the water if you've got a vessel. Right? So we know, to the intellect, we know those things are not, they don't mean what people think they mean. For as long as people think they mean that, you're being rebound all the time because you're being controlled by an external entity called religion. He became the trustee, you might say, in showing you. I've got shit all over my bloody glasses. Okay. He forgave your sins, which is debt. He was pinned to the cross, or personal identification number, the PIN number. And he died on the cross and was raised back to life. Everything in those terms is trust law, is it not? You know it. It's all trust law, that. Every single bit of it. That is the concept when you use your intellect. The religion is for those who exist entirely on emotion, and in that lesser interpretation, religion will rebind you in perpetuity to the bondage. You will always need a priest to hold your hand. You'll always need the Earth Father to chastise you and to forgive you. That's the Pope. You will be charged and discharged at the whim of the earthly Father because you fail to take responsibility for self and depend on another. You give away your freedom for benefits. You give your energy to the Master who builds the great work of the ages, and ultimately you're going to serve them in the building of that matrix and keeping it going. Triple Crown, that was established by a testamentarist trust going back to 1302 by a papal bull in which the Pope said, I own all the land and all the flesh and all the souls. The birth certificate is a baptismal certificate, and the nature of baptism is immersion under water. And when you're immersed under water, you are effectively underwater, which means you're in debt. You are lost to the sea, or the Holy See. You are actually in hell, because if you look in the Law Dictionary, the definition of hell is where the king kept his debtors in a chamber underneath the office of the exchequer, which is the office of the arch-treasurer. We are in hell because we are bonded by a birth certificate and a baptismal certificate that immersed us underwater by ecclesiastical law and a papal bull that said by dictating in absolute authority, apostolic succession, and all the rest of that have the control to mandate that I own all the land and all the flesh and all the souls, which ultimately tells you that the bonded debt system is a harvesting system. It's to harvest the life force in the capacity that we have as true creator beings. In the image of the Father of the beginnings is what we should be, not the Elohim, and specifically the chief Aruni of that, who's very many-faced. In essence, when we put in the due diligence, we learn, we expand our sight, we begin to see what is hidden in plain sight. We become aware, we have knowledge, we begin to apply it. We therefore begin to rescind and revoke any and all presumptions of consent of a voluntary nature. So it's the volunteering that's the problem as well in everything we do. Exclusive equity operates on what's called maxims, and there are 20 principal maxims of equity, as opposed to 100 million codes and statutes in the military-occupied domestic zone, to which all countries are bonded. So we're all under occupation, and we went through that about 3 or 4 years ago. So there's your maxims of equity. Equity sees that it has done what ought to be done. Equity will not suffer a wrong to be without a remedy. Equity delights in equality. One who seeks equity must do equity. Equity aids the vigilant, not those who slumber on their rights. Yeah? Not who's... It's there for you. You can't be in equity unless you see what it is it expects. Because if you're not holding your rights, your legal title by definition of your action. So all the wind and piss they do is irrelevant. Which is why it's not worth bothering about. In all this 10 months gig with the courts, I have not once used the word fraud. Not once. deliberately. Okay, it's important. That word has not come into this mix one at any time, because I've remained, the communications have remained in honour at all times. Okay, and there's only been one claim made, really. Equity imputes an intent to fulfil an obligation. Equity acts in personam or persons. Equity abhors a forfeiture. Equity does not require an idle gesture. He who comes in equity must come with clean hands. Equity delights to do justice and not by halves. Okay? Now that's interesting, because under occupation we are by right allowed to seek our expected rights, and according to Cork or Blackstone, we are not charged for justice. Okay? So that's interesting. Equity delights to do justice, and they can't charge you. Now, that's again important. Equity will take jurisdiction to avoid a multiplicity of suits. Equity follows the law. Equity will not aid a volunteer. You see there? Equity will not aid a volunteer. So by the governments keep pulling in this volunteer crap, by definition of the fact, you are out of equity. Important. Where equities are equal, the law will prevail. Between equal equities, the first in order of time shall prevail. Equity will not complete an imperfect gift. Equity will not allow a statute to be used as a cloak for fraud. Now, how important is that? Okay? Equity will not allow a statute to be used as a cloak for fraud. Very important. Equity will not allow a trust to fail for want of a trustee. Okay? Equity will not allow a trust to fail for want of a trustee. You're appointing these trustees, are you not? You see? You're going to have to come back to this and study these maxims to start to understand what's expected in the realm of equity, and stop crying about their so-called supposed fraud. They're locking the system up. Equity will not allow a trust. Yeah. Equity regards the beneficiary as the true owner. Okay? Very important. Now, when you read the maxims of equity, they are very clear, and they're universal, eternal principles of equality. But one of them refers to the nature of volunteer. It says equity will not come to the aid of a voluntary, which translates means you have no capacity or standing to claim your equitable interest if you're still operating as a volunteer. So to change your status, you must properly and timely sever that presumption. You must sever those assumed relationships. But remember, you're acting as the settler. You're appointing the trustees, so you would have to come in a manner that does that. But you can't do that if you're coming in as legal title. You with me? You get that? It's so important that you understand this stuff, to build that picture in your mind of what it is you're actually looking to achieve. So we are speaking in terms of status, standing and capacity. Yep. Your status can be a bondage, charity, or you could be a private being. The system is divided into two halves, the public side and the private, because we are talking about the bankrupt corporate entity, the franchise, the bondage surety relationship that is what is operating in the public. So the bankruptcy side, the bondage, the surety, all that's going on in the public. All of it. So we are familiar with how the public operates in terms of you pay the bills, you pay your taxes, you get insurance, etc. But few people understand how to go into the private, and when you change your status, and you move into the private side, you have standing in equity, and you are therefore able to state a claim. Right? So it's not about battling these people, it's about holding your standing. Form your status, hold your standing, then comes the capacity. And that capacity is to state a claim. Now, this is important in understanding that if you act as the holder of the legal title, you are the trustee. But if you come from the private as the beneficiary, you hold equity. If you come as a legal title, you have merged the two and the beneficial equity converts to the Crown, which has all the statutes under which whomever you are dealing with has in place to deal with you as the trustee. And if you are liable to act within the parameters of the legal acts, because that's what governs the public, the one holding the liability. So the issue of exclusive equity must be understood to be in operation or is created every day. That in the public all the debt exists, that every day that debt is traded and creates private equity. But if you're attached as a bonded surety to a bankrupt franchise, you have no standing, because in the jurisdiction and nature of bankruptcy, a bankrupt has no standing. He literally cannot state a claim. So you couldn't possibly be coming in as a bankrupt as the legal title, because you can't state a claim. And the thing they've bankrupted is the legal title. Yeah. You cannot stand on the water without a vessel. You can, however, stand on the land on your own 2 feet. If you're not standing on the land, which you cannot if you're a bankrupt, you're lifted off the land and you're in a containment field, which is called a civil body. And if you're not on the land, you have no standing. You can't state or stake a claim. And therefore, you have no substantive law. You don't have access to exclusive equity. You are given the civil procedure which hybridizes law and equity into civil code and civil procedure. And remember, everything on the land today is under military occupation. So you have a limited usufruct, or a limited use of the property that belongs to the state. But everything you've ever purchased in the name of that franchise with pound notes belongs to the state. In essence, we must consider the presumption of voluntary consent in all things relating to the public. It is upon you to rebut that presumption which comes through the advance in our own education and becoming aware of what we said to be hidden in plain sight. We become aware of it and must step forward, be that in the written communications or by mouth. We have a designed and structured system that goes back to Babylon and beyond, which shows itself in a way that for as long as the private banking system exists and operates the utility of debt instruments as a monetary function, the best we can do is move in a manner that does not bind or bond our flesh and blood as a living being to that debt. When you allow yourself to be bonded, and by becoming the bonded surety to allow the system to create monetized debt, then you are a bonded indentured servant to that system. And as I presented earlier, we need to find the way to be out of the bondage while able to utilize it. So yes, we still receive Federal Reserve notes or pound notes, but we know how to construct. And how do we do that in a way that does not allow what's called a traversal or a recontracting back into the system? Now we can better understand the idea of correcting the status. You need to remain the equitable beneficiary, which means you have to appoint a trustee. Then all bills become the liability of the trustee, the holder of the legal title in trust law, and the holder of the liability. In turn, the trustee has to act in the interests of the beneficiary. So the debt has to be discharged or offset by that trustee. Notice is huge in terms of the principle of law and how that applies. You are aiming to remove yourself as the secured interest, to sever the attachment and to settle the waters. And so back to Jesus we go. Now Matthew 8, 21 to 22, and he said, So it says, and another of the disciples said unto him, Master, suffer me first to go and bury my father. So he wanted to leave and go and bury his dad. And Jesus said unto him, Follow me and let the dead bury the dead. The very next verse has Jesus and the disciples on a boat, on a sea, and they go out onto the water, and the waters are unstable, they are stormy. The disciples are trying to deal with it, and they can't deal with it. They can't steady the boat. They can't settle the waters. And they turn to him and say, Master, can you deal with it? He does whatever he does, and the sea goes calm. Why? Because he's a master, because he's truly the master of his own ship, as opposed to being in a ghost vessel, created as a vessel in commerce, underwater and in debt. By applying the intellect and not the emotion, what he's being taught is when he says, let the dead bury the dead, he's telling you, if you try to settle things in the realm of the dead, which is what commerce is, remembering we're all talking about corporations, a fiction, then to act within a pseudo vessel is a projection outside of ourselves, leading to the fact we are entrained to an external entity, which we then give pseudo life force. But it is actually a dead entity. It's a corpse, it's a corporation. You are thus speaking through the corpse of the dead. You are drowned. The kingdom of my Father is within. These are the only maxims you need from all that story as the way out to grasp and to follow. So one must not give up your source mind, the heart, to become secured in an outside vessel. So you don't want to be doing that. You want to stick to your heart. Yet, when you're fixed into the suicidal brain because you are trapped in the lower three chakras, fear runs the show. And the security of the garden will drag you to privileges and benefits. And the world will continue to be built as the great work of the ages to sanctify the covenant of Abraham, the child murderer. So be it would have been anyway. Remember, we have considered the highest source and Father, the Father of the beginnings. It's a realm of the dead down here. And so if you engage by trying to settle things commercially, you are trying to tend to the dead. So what that phrase, let the dead bury the dead, really means is let those who are dead be appointed as your trustee. Appoint them with the liability. They're all operating in the realm of the dead by default. That's everybody in the state. Judge, everybody, civil, they're all operating in the realm of the dead. Now, you might need to, I'll probably put this together as a short video and remove anything that's unnecessary, because it's very important in building that mind's eye concept of what it is you're actually doing. And then you don't have to waste your time so much looking at what's gone wrong and what was. You're looking at what is, because the essence of what we're trying to do hasn't changed. It's still the same. You cannot deal in the dead with the dead. You can't do it. So we don't have to keep going through all these old ancient things, what's changed and blah, blah, blah. We focus to dealing with that, getting us out and off the liability. And that means moving into equity. And honestly, it's the only thing you need to focus to from this moment on to get yourself out. That's how important it is, ladies and gentlemen. Now, where are we? 2 hours, oh my God, 2 hours 6. I'll quickly just whiz through what you've said. So we're not benefiting with customers. Yeah. Pay attention, Sean, in the floor. There's no public or private. So no except discharge. Pay attention as shown in the floor. Yeah. Oops, correct me, you lick. Weefy man, dropped everything I'm here. Good everything, godly ones. No persons here. Good stuff, Weefy man. Evening. This means you're operating under your own full commercial liability. Once you state this in a legal environment, they have to accept your pledge to pay for any wrongdoing. Okay, Biggie. Persons are sinners, not us. No license, no tax, no MT, no insurance, no problem. You have given your word to cover any damage you have created. You have a trust fund to do this with. Quite right. You still need a trustee. Listen to the legal language. All re, no, AIN's ed, in past, nothing in the now. Yep, absolutely. So we have to declare accommodation. Says we, Fimam. So we have to declare accommodation. No. You're still not seeing. Once you have a trustee, because everything that's coming at you is commerce, you would present it to the trustee. You wouldn't be taking the liability upon yourself. You'd be passing it on to the trustee, because you are the beneficial. You are holding the beneficial title in equity. So it's not that you have to come out of the system. But the liability goes where the liability belongs. And if you're not operating and holding the legal title, it's not you, is it? But you're playing a part in it. You're still in the game. You're just not the holder of the liability. That's what I'm saying here. Offers, claims, assumption, maxim, you should know with whom you deal with, says Sensven. Sensven, there is nothing wrong with the law. It's there to protect you from yourself and your temptation. Legislation is a rule that needs consent. How can there be a beneficiary when there is no trust? Hopefully you've been listening a little bit, because that's early on. How can you benefit from a global prison? You're not listening. You're a man, not a fiction. Otherwise you would not be a soul and spirit. You try bringing man in a court, lad. Let's see what happens. It's not human monster, it's just... Well, it's actually sea monster. Great to see a good member. Good number up as here in the chat, Sean. 1 hour at a time. Should be 600 of us. Yeah, I know, Lou, all the radio. Thank you, evening. Well, people are only going to come if they understand it and they want it. If they don't want it, they want entertaining, they're not going to come anywhere near this. Big E says, Sean, just hit the nail on the head. Take responsibility for all your actions. Operate under your full commercial liability. It really is that simple. Well said, Big E. A monster is a fiction as long as you're not a man in your mind, but you're a man in your soul. You see, are you a man or are you man? Genesis 1. Made man, not a man. Male, female, created he them. You've got to pay attention to the words. Not let the edit that you've had shoved in your mind since year big take over when you're studying. The words. And what I've started to do now at all points is go for my definitions to the Geneva Bible. Because that's what King James Bible were obfuscating. And when you start to study the Geneva Bible, then you start to realise why they created the King James Bible. And I'll say no more about that. But I now go straight to the Geneva Bible for all my biblical requirements and nothing else until I can buy one. All positive, me or the op negative, blah, 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 blah. What's it going to be? There's a man with a clear comprehension, understanding responsibility, blah, 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 blah. Nouveau Laredo, they treat us like the wards of the state because you are. If you are coming in outside of equity. Look at them maxims again, at what they're saying. There's the maxims. You want to understand equity, quick, smart, there's the maxims. From those maxims is where you take your data. That's your study. Then you can start to see the picture. No weeks of legal user for yep. I just test. Yeah, it's just a test. So leave it to the max. Only get one. Make every day count. Be a slave or not. We see those not paying attention. Sean gives his energy, does this for free. Respect. Well, thank you for that. Contract is more than just an agreement. It's a pinnacle of agreement where equal consideration and full disclosure is the minimal requirement. Well, it's equal consideration. If you're not up to the same catch as them, is that their fault? No, it's not, is it? Can you see what I'm getting at when I say take responsibility? Instead of looking at it, they're going, ah! We know what they're doing. Adapt. I wouldn't contract during a consultation with a doctor. I said that I would think about the advice and recommendations and make another appointment. Well said, Martin. Good idea. To Darius Montgomery. Bored. This helps. Good. That's good. So, okay, now, you should know what contact is. I don't think you do, based on what you're saying. I'll take it that's to me as it sense offender. Oh, somebody's getting upset. No, mate, I can assure you, from where I'm looking, it's you that's missing some big pieces of the jigsaw. Freedom is knowing right from wrong. Well, that's duplicitous from the get-go, is it not? See, it's good because you're spilling your mind all over here and I can see your issues. Not that I'm not being derogatory when I say that, but just reading your things, I can see where you're missing things. So right and wrong, straight away, you're in here. Left, right, good, evil, dark, light. You're not here. Stormer, Star of the Sea, Pole Star, Kiev Stormer, funny name. It is a funny name, isn't it? I have to agree, yeah, absolutely. If you don't shape your own mind, someone will do it for you. Absolutely they will. Weefy man, surely Ezra 7.25 proves it's fraud. Surely. Well, it's not coming to mind what Ezra 7.25 is, to be fair, Weefy man. You might have to present that at the end here and I can have a look. Good values and principles are not taught, they are inherited. Surety is not only because there is no trust. You keep saying that. I'm Joe Bloggs, a living man. To use the title is to answer to the presumption. Okay. Weefy man, that's us. Good work, Sean, as usual. Thanks, Liam. Time is never running out. To Darius Montgomery, I owe taxes. Do you indeed? Send me an email. It's definitely NRG's app. Good stuff. Catholic Church or Roman Church. Well, we're not dealing with the church now. We're dealing with the Eastern Orthodox Church, and it's been so since 1963. We're dealing with the Vatican corporate state, which is not the church. So, be threat to people present is the people in itself. Okay, trust even beneficiary. Okay, I think we've pretty much. I got you. I get it. Says Weefy man. Okay, mate. Big E, remember always the 3 R's. Respect for yourself, respect for others, responsibility for all your actions. Well said, Big E. And Martin says, plausible credibility is the devising of an explanation for the idea of something that cannot be proved, such as quantum mechanics, a fiction. Right, chaps, thanks very much for joining. Thanks for taking part. You may need to go back to it again, but more importantly, the maxims is where it's at. Why is that doing that? I'm looking and watching this, and it's like half an hour behind. What the fuck? I don't know what's going on here. So it's 16 minutes behind I'm watching here. What do you look at? That's weird. Unless I keep turning it off. I don't know. Anyway, on that numptiness, I'm going to say to you, thanks for joining, thanks for taking part. Mods, if you were there, thanks for modding. And as we always say, thanks, and till the next time, if I can find it.
electronic engineering,